Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain and welcome to the DCOM review. Halloween is upon us and we're celebrating the occasion in the best way I know how, by overanalyzing and breaking down a movie based around the mythos surrounding the day itself. Some people would call this movie one of the most definitive DCOMs of all time, while others see it as one of the all-time best, or maybe even both. And, over 18 years after its original premiere, we're going to break down how good the first film in the iconic franchise really was. Spoiler warning now, you all know the drill. With all that said, let's dive into Halloweentown. We start things off with the Piper family of Marnie, Dylan, and Sophie, and their mother Gwen. The kids are a little distraught to find out that their mother won't allow them to go out for Halloween, specifically Marnie, and no clear answer is given as to why. And before too long, we get our introduction to the lifeblood of the entire franchise, Aggie Cromwell, who immediately captures this warm and endearing spirit that really sets a good tone for the rest of the film. Aggie brings the kids all manner of gifts, but it's clear that her and Gwen aren't exactly on the best terms. Their contentious relationship is front and center when Gwen argues with Aggie about wanting to train Marnie as a witch, but Gwen is in firm opposition because she wants her kids to have a normal life, which I would agree is vastly overrated. But from their conversation, we also learn that back in Halloweentown, people are mysteriously vanishing, an issue Gwen refuses to assist Aggie with. So, Marnie overhears the conversation and decides to sneak onto Aggie's bus and travel to Halloweentown. Dylan and Sophie join her, and then we're treated to the mystical, magical world of Halloweentown. Even after 18 whole years, this set still stands as one of the all-time greatest. It's so imaginative in its design, captivating in scale, and embraces both familiar and unique Halloween iconography for both its characters and its more salient background features. Not too long passes before we're introduced to Calabar, otherwise known as the antagonist you see coming from a mile away. He's the mayor of Halloweentown and helps the kids get to Aggie's house with the help of Benny the skeleton driver. Since I love puns more than most people, Benny became one of the most memorable parts of this movie for me. So, the kids are finally reunited with Aggie, who decides that instead of consoling their worried mother, who's currently missing 3 kids, the best thing to do would be witch training. But I still like the general idea here, because training people in the magical arts while they're young makes a lot of sense and is a detail lesser movies have gotten wrong. But first, Aggie has to stop the hooded demon that appears in her cauldron visions. There's also this guy named Luke who Marnie meets back in town, but he's just kinda there to be shallow, or at least that would have been his only role had his character not been used for a much more interesting point later on. So eventually, after a fun ride on a broomstick, Gwen arrives in Halloweentown to put some serious scolding on everyone. Unfortunately, they can't quite go home yet because there aren't any currently running buses to take them back to the mortal world. But then, we learn that Calabar and Gwen apparently used to be a couple way back when, which is a character dynamic that I wish this movie would dive further into, but we'll get to that. But trouble ensues when Luke takes Aggie to an abandoned movie theater where she finds the missing Halloweentown citizens in addition to the hood demon. The demon freezes Aggie and Gwen, but the kids escape, and now it's up to them to finish what their grandmother started in order to save the town. Which basically means that they go treasure hunting for a few minutes to power up the magical MacGuffin that the demon wanted, but Aggie refused to give up. Once they power up the talisman, they have to install it into this big central jack-o'-lantern, and then it's revealed that the hooded demon was Calabar? Wow, what a clever twist. Did anyone else see that coming? Oh, everyone. So Calabar tries convincing the residents of Halloweentown to take over the mortal world with him, while Marnie is trying to get the talisman installed. Calabar tries freezing her, but she manages to just slip the talisman inside, unfreezing herself and all the people frozen at the theater. This leads to all 5 Cromwells fighting back against Calabar and eventually defeating him, thus saving both this world and the mortal one. And the movie ends with the family taking a magical bus ride back home. And now, the characters. The side characters in this movie, even the ones with little or no lines, are for the most part very entertaining. They all look and act the part, and help add to the aesthetic this movie is going for, which is a careful mix between spooky and enchanting, all adding up to genuine fun. I liked what they ended up doing with Luke in this movie, because the reason he worked with Calabar is to avoid facing the monster he believes himself to be. But by becoming the kind of jerk that he was, he ended up embracing a much worse monster than whatever his external appearance could convey. It's a pretty nice detail to add for a minor character, and it also adds to the overall character of Calabar as well. Calabar is basically a better version of Thanatos in almost every conceivable way. He finds a way to rise to power in an effort to change his society from within, proving that he isn't just evil because the movie needed a villain, or because Gwen dumped him way back when. He's evil because somewhere down the line, he grew hateful of the mortal world. Heck, he's probably been this ambitious since he and Gwen were dating, and maybe something about that caused their breakup, and maybe even helps inform Gwen's less than positive perspective on the town she left behind. He's still a fairly obvious villain in the context of the movie, but the way he uses, targets, and manipulates people for his own ends both on screen and off would make for a captivating solo movie all on its own. Even though I didn't think his good guy mayor front was all that convincing, there's always this mystery surrounding him, because you can always tell throughout the course of the film that his backstory runs a lot deeper than this movie had time to delve into. If only the sequel turned that mystery into a viable script instead of focusing on his annoying prick of a son that just comes out of nowhere. But all in all, Calabar is a pretty good villain. My reasoning has a lot to do with the below-the-surface details, but I think that makes him all the more captivating, despite the disappointing fact that the sequels did nothing in the way of advancing him as a character. Sophie and Dylan aren't overly important in the grander Halloweentown narrative. In fact, later movies would phase Sophie out completely, but in the context of this movie, they both had the roles to play and they pretty much played them. Sophie doesn't really do much to advance the plot, so there's not too much to say about her, but I think this is the best version of Dylan as a character that we ever get, because he only gets less engaging as the franchise progresses. What I like about him here is that his contrarian attitude towards Marnie does well to provide a different yet understandable perspective while also serving as a parallel to the way Gwen relates to Aggie, and this movie ends for him in the best possible way, by allowing him to not only believe in the power he has as a warlock, but embrace it. But considering he was a supporting character in all 4 movies, I do find myself wishing they would have put a bit more effort into a real character arc for him, instead of stopping any and all development dead in its tracks with the conclusion of this film. Gwen is an interesting character, because you know that she has, at the very least, a complicated relationship with both her mother and her old home, but the specifics are never really delved into. Similar to Calabar, there's a lot about her, including whatever happened to Mr. Piper, that isn't really explained, but you know it has to be relevant to informing her perspective now. But even though there's a lot about her that's never given a true-to-form explanation, I never found myself doubting her perspective as a character and a mother, which has a lot to do with the solid acting job done here by Judith Hogg. Unfortunately, just like Dylan, her character isn't given too much in the way of development, despite being a permanent fixture in the franchise. Marnie Piper, played by Kimberly J. Brown, really helps make this movie and the franchise a special one. Her enthusiastic and unapologetic embrace of all things weird and mysterious makes her a great character to follow into the unique world of Halloweentown. And even in this movie, she has you believing that she can do enough to save the day, because when the situations become serious, she steps up to the challenge, a trait that helps inform her perspective when she takes on much grander tasks in the next 2 movies. She's not the most complicated character per se, but she's still a really good one that goes through many tests, passing them at every step, and leaving Halloweentown a little better than she found it. And all of that through the girl that dared to proudly embrace her difference, who, later on, helps others embrace their differences as well. As I've mentioned in other videos, I think that this one particular film in the franchise primarily is carried by one Aggie Cromwell and the wonderful way she acts as a mother, a grandmother, and a witch herself. With her character, she's able to bring a lot out of the people around her because she sees more in them than they sometimes see in themselves, which has even more relevance for Marnie eventually becoming the more definitive lead in future movies. Aggie really sets the tone for this movie, with most of the other characters following suit, which is important because she makes a world of magic that much more magical because of her engaging character. In short, she does the best possible job at properly representing the world of Halloweentown. And that's Halloweentown. So, what's the verdict? Halloweentown deserves to be called a DCOM classic because even watching it after all these years, the elements that made it good then still resonate now. The characters they construct are interesting, and for the most part, the actors present nail their respective roles. Dwayne Dunham's directorial tendencies are made for this sort of thing because he understands how to capture a variety of emotions on screen and make it all feel genuine. But unlike Tiger Cruise, where he had to portray fear, he portrays wonderment and excitement here, and even though I would argue that it's the less challenging of the two, it still really works here. This movie's quality also owes a lot to the way everything is designed. As I mentioned, the set design, the general aesthetic, the look, and the environment that is Halloweentown is all pretty special, especially working with a TV movie budget. And unlike most DCOMs where the background characters would just be random faces walking down a hall or something, every background character here needed to add his or her own unique flair to the overall town and sell the environment. From that standpoint, it's probably the best use of costumes and walk-on roles of any DCOM ever made. There are, however, a couple of factors holding this movie back, at least for me, from being a top 10 DCOM. For one thing, the actual story is almost overly simplistic, and this world obviously isn't void of secrets and mystery, so I felt like there could have been a little more added nuance to the plot. A lot of that has to do with Calabar being an interesting character, but also an obvious villain, and once we meet him, the rest of the movie is pretty predictable. I think if a little more had been done with Calabar, then maybe we have an even better movie, because then you can mix in both subtle character elements with overt design elements and create something truly incredible. But the movie doesn't delve enough into either him or Gwen all that much. All of this could have made for a great sequel where the mysteries of Calabar are slowly revealed, and maybe that connects with Mr. Piper and his absence, or at least gives us more background as to what drove Gwen to pursue a more normal life so fervently. If they had gone that route in the follow-up movies, then a lot of the elements present in this film would have looked better retroactively. But unfortunately, the sequels we got were a little all over the place and barely had any real connective tissue of which to potentially build a grander narrative. Getting back to just Halloweentown, what we have here is a very good movie that is fairly straightforward in structure, but actually makes the most of that simplicity by placing more emphasis on exploring the world they've created. To that end, the characters present, be the main, supporting, or background, all help add to that experience. It's probably not one of those DCOMs that you'll spend too much time thinking about in terms of narrative structure, but it is one of those DCOMs that you might spend a fair amount of time thinking about because of the experience of watching it. Complex character breakdowns and detailed plot summations are great, make no mistake, but sometimes the actual experience is legitimately the best aspect of a film. And at the end of the day, good movies are the ones that stick with you, the ones you don't soon forget, the ones that, even after 18 years, still make you believe in the magic. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, throw down a like, subscribe for more, and share the Halloweentown magic everywhere. And don't forget to follow the Disney Brain on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Links down below. The coming days will bring the return of the Girl Meets World reviews, and maybe a video in between then and now. And then, we'll be reviewing our first Nick original movie, Swindle. So, lots to look forward to. Until then...
Call me if you need me!
Come back here, you little heel! Hey, this could be a good look for me. Yeah, baby!